Hello, and welcome to Olam Cotton's video tutorial on invoices and settlements. OTM provides a way for Olam's carriers to proactively manage the invoice and settlement lifecycle. This takes place through the Service Provider portal. Carriers can access all their freight invoices, create disputes, request approvals, and see vouchers all through the self-administered portal. Before we actually look at the invoice screen inside the Service Provider portal, let's take a look at the general order of events of the business process flow. First, in order for an invoice to be generated by OTM, a delivered shipment tracking event needs to be created. This event will trigger the automatic creation of a shared invoice document. The invoice is rated based on the carrier's submitted rates and is automatically created with the same cost. Both the carrier and Olam will work towards approval using the same document. Please refer to the video on shipment tracking for more information about this subject. Depending on the stage that an invoice is in, it could show one of several payment request statuses. If an invoice is newly created and has not been submitted for approval yet, it will have a payment request status of not submitted. Before a payment request can even be submitted, it must show all green check marks in the required fields. If a payment request action is submitted without all green check marks, OTM will display a status of submission failed. We will go into more detail about the green check marks in a few minutes. If all the required green check marks are displayed and a payment request has been submitted, but the financial amounts have been changed by the carrier and the rates no longer agree, OTM will allow the submission, but the invoice will go into pending review status. At that point, Olam will review the financial changes and either reject or approve the new amount. A rejection may warrant separate communication between the carrier and Olam. Finally, there's a separate status of disputed, which is designated for issued debit notes only. This gives the carrier an opportunity to dispute the chargeback with Olam. After approval is given, a voucher is created. These vouchers are posted to Olam's account payable system and are scheduled for payment. Scheduled payment terms are dictated by the Transportation Service Agreement. Let's take a look at some of the invoicing requirements that we have just referred to. First, there is no need for a carrier to physically email their invoices to Olam, but for good order, it is strongly encouraged that invoices should still be uploaded and attached to the loads invoice. Also, there is no more need for Olam to visually match the carrier name or match the source and destination locations. However, there are some items that are still required, such as the load delivery event itself, matching financial amounts, signed PODs or BOLs, the carrier invoice number, container and seal numbers for all drayage shipments, and EWR pickup and delivered notifications. An EWR is a warehouse's electronic verification of pickup and delivery, but it's the responsibility of Olam to track these two items. Even though the EWR is Olam's responsibility, these items are displayed in order to give the carrier insight into why an invoice may not be ready for approval. Now let's look at the invoice screen itself. After navigating to the dashboard within your portal, you will see an Invoices icon. So in order to submit for invoice approval and payment, we must first search for the loads invoice. To do so, we will click on the Invoices icon, which will bring up the Invoice Finder screen. This search screen allows you to query OTM using different filter criteria. Let's search for a specific load using the mark number and click the Search button. At this point, you will notice the invoice has a payment request status of Not Submitted. You will also notice there is only one green check mark and several backwards red check marks. If I were to select the invoice row, click the Actions button, and select Request Approval, a window will pop up showing that the request for approval was initiated. You can close the window and rerun your original query, which will refresh the results. Now you will notice that the status has changed to Submission Failed, as expected since not all the check marks were green. So let's change the red check mark in the signed POD column to green by uploading a signed POD. To do this, select the invoice row, click the Actions button, and select Upload Document. OTM will open an Upload Document window. Click the Choose File button, which will open a standard Windows dialog box for you to choose the document. Now, in the Content Management System drop-down box, select Signed POD BOL. This will properly tag your document in the OTM system. Finally, click the Upload button. The window will show that it has been successfully uploaded. If we rerun the original query and refresh the results, it will now show a green check mark in this column. Now let's change the red check mark in the invoice number column by double-clicking on the carrier invoice number field itself to fill in the information. After entering the data, you will notice the field turns yellow, which indicates the newly entered information still needs to be saved. Simply click the Save button to do so. A pop-up window will display showing its progress. When it's successfully saved, you will see the shipment number and a green check mark. You may close the pop-up window. The results page is automatically refreshed and now a green check mark is in this column. If we were to request approval now, the status would not change and remains as submission failed. This is because there is still a red check mark remaining in the EWR picked up column. Again, as previously mentioned, this is Olam's responsibility to change this to a green check mark. I will do so now from within Olam's back-end system and refresh the results. Now that this task has been completed in Olam's back-end system, we can refresh and see all the check marks are green. Before I submit it again for approval, you will notice the original and current amount columns are in agreement. Because of this, the submission will be auto-approved by OTM with no manual review needed by Olam. So let's now select the invoice row, click the Actions button, and select Request Approval. Like before, a window will pop up showing that the request for approval was initiated. You can close the window and rerun your original query, which will refresh the results. Now you will notice the status has changed to Approved, and the indicator is turned to a green check mark as well. This indicates that a voucher has been created and was posted to Olam's account payable system for scheduled payment. Now let's take a look at what happens if the carrier is not in agreement with the financial amounts and wishes to alter them. We will navigate to the Invoice Finder screen by clicking the New Query button at the bottom. Once displayed, we can enter in a different mark number and click the Search button. On this invoice row, you will see that the original and current amount columns are currently in agreement. To alter the financial amounts before requesting approval, click on the Invoice ID hyperlink to open the invoice itself. You will notice two tabs, a Header tab and a Line Items tab. Click on the Line Items tab to see the current list of load costs. This is where we can edit an existing line item or add a new one. We will do both in this example. Let's say the carrier needed to charge one extra day of chassis. To edit the chassis line, which is represented by the accessorial code CHE, click on the pencil icon at the end of the row and the line item edit screen will display. Simply change the amount to the new desired amount and click the Save button at the bottom. You will now see the new altered amount. Now let's add a new line to the list. Click on the New Line Item button and the line item edit screen will display again. Since it's a new item being added, we are only concerned with entering 4 fields. The line item sequence number, which in this case will be the 4th item in the list, the freight charge, which will be a $50 charge in this example, the cost type, which will always be accessorial, and the description, which should accurately describe the added cost. Now that we have edited the chassis line and added a new accessorial line, we can click the Finish button up top. Let's rerun the original query, which will refresh the results. You will notice the original and current amount columns are no longer in agreement. So now let's request approval and refresh our results. You will notice the status has changed to Pending Review. At this point, Olam will manually reject or approve the new invoice amount. Again, a rejection may warrant separate communication between the carrier and Olam. Please check out our other videos discussing the functionality within the dashboard.